My husband doesn't see how his work wife is trying to destroy our marriage. I am at my wit's end with my husband's coworker Sarah and his complete inability to see what's happening. I'm not usually one for Reddit, but I need to know if I'm going crazy here. Where do I even start? 3 years ago, my husband Mark started working with Sarah. At first, I tried to be welcoming. I invited her to our BBQs, included her in group outings, and genuinely tried to be friendly. Big mistake. She spent the entire time making backhanded comments about everything from my career. "Oh, you're just a yoga instructor. How peaceful," to my cooking. I guess not everyone can master basic seasoning. The real problem is that Mark thinks she's just being funny. Last month, she literally threw away the anniversary mug I gave him because it clashed with the office aesthetic. When I got upset, Mark said I was being too sensitive and that Sarah just has high standards for office decor. It was a mug with our wedding photo on it. Some greatest hits from Sarah. She scheduled a mandatory work dinner on our anniversary. She convinced Mark not to take a promotion because it would mean working with a different team. She posts daily photos of them together with hashtags like #WorkPowerCouple and #WorkSpouse. She tells everyone at their office that she takes better care of him than I do. She changed his coffee order and now tells everyone she trained him right. The worst part, my husband is completely blind to all of this. Yesterday, he actually told me about how Sarah said our new house, which we spent months searching for, was charming, in a starter home kind of way. He repeated this while laughing. I tried talking to him about it, but Sarah has convinced him. I'm just insecure. She's managed to insert herself into every aspect of our lives. They text constantly, even on weekends. She knows his schedule better than I do. She rearranged his entire desk and office wardrobe because his style was too suburban. Husband, that's what he is. Last week, I suggested marriage counseling. He looked genuinely confused. He of course went and talked to Sarah about it. I found out from another coworker that she's been telling people that Mark and I are going through a rough patch and that she's just being a good friend by giving him someone to talk to. We weren't going through anything until she started this nonsense. The breaking point, I stopped by his office to surprise him with lunch. I know, but it was his birthday. And Sarah was supposedly out sick. Guess who was there? Sarah. She'd miraculously recovered and bought him a cake that said "To my work hubby" with a photo of them from the office holiday party. She saw me and said, "Oh, Amy, you came to ... How nice." Mark, you didn't tell me your real wife was coming. I'm not crazy, right? This woman is trying to destroy my marriage while my husband stands there grinning like it's all some big joke. What do I do? Divorce seems extreme, but I'm running out of options here. TL, doctor, my husband's work wife is actively trying to sabotage our marriage while he remains completely oblivious to her obvious manipulation. ETA, I should have stated that the promotion wasn't one that would increase his salary but his title. It would give him more leadership experience. It still blows my mind that he turned it down just so he could stay on the same team as her. ETA, I should have told the mug story in its entirety. She accidentally broke the mug. I noticed it was gone when I was visiting him one day, and I asked him about it. He said she accidentally knocked it over, and then later he repeated a joke she made about how it didn't fit the office aesthetic. Have you subscribed yet? Hit that like button, ring the bell so you never miss a thing, and help us grow. Your support means the world. Now, let's jump into the part you've all been waiting for, reading and reacting to your awesome comments. User forward _ most _ 1933 said, "You have a husband problem. Go to counseling and get professional help to communicate your concerns. Remind him that he's married to you, not Sarah, so her opinions shouldn't matter when it comes to your marriage." And honestly, she nodded reading this, because that's the core of it, isn't it? This isn't just a Sarah problem. This is a Mark problem. If the man you're married to can't remember which side of the fence he's supposed to protect, therapy might help, but only if he wants to protect it in the first place. Late _ butterfly _ 5997 came in hot with, "Yeah, this guy isn't oblivious, he's complicit." a short sentence that cut straight to the bone. She read that and winced, because that's the truth so many don't want to admit. Sometimes we tell ourselves our partner just doesn't see it because that hurts less than admitting they see it and don't care. It's easier to call it ignorance than betrayal. Stokes 80 echoed that feeling. He loves the attention. And really, that's the part that stings. It's not about Sarah, it's about what Sarah gives him: validation, flirting, power. And the question becomes, what does he get from you that feels less interesting now? Off the Nightfall offered a more detailed breakdown, saying that even if he never physically cheated, his tolerance for disrespect is already betrayal. And that hits hard, because every time he laughs at Sarah's digs or lets her erase parts of his wife's presence, he's making a choice. Not all affairs are physical. Some of them are in the way you allow someone to push your partner out of the frame. The Treehouse, in a moment of self-awareness, asked why any wife would keep allowing this once she's voiced how hurtful it is. And that's where the painful reflection kicks in. Because sometimes love makes you hang on longer than logic would. Advise because you remember the good. Because letting go feels like failure. But maybe staying, under these terms, is a bigger loss. 3_crows_horror show reminded everyone that when a man allows another woman to remake him change his clothes, his style, his habits, it often means something deeper is brewing. It's not just a coffee order, it's an erasure and allowing. It means he's letting someone else dictate how he shows up in the world while ignoring the person who stood by him long before Sarah ever showed up. Coyote__Jones brought levity, but also truth. Why is any of this happening at work? The drama isn't just marital, it's professional chaos too. And the fact that Mark sees none of that awkwardness, alarming. Jappy Empanada didn't mince words. He's already dating Sarah during work hours. And doesn't that say it all? People talk about micro-cheating like it's a gray area. But when someone's emotionally checked in elsewhere for 8 hours a day and keeps bringing that person into their marriage, it stops being innocent real quick. Manny Kamalapert nailed the emotional infidelity angle, pointing out how easy it is for someone to justify everything short of physical cheating. But emotional betrayal is slippery, subtle, and sometimes even more damaging because it's cloaked in deniability. Sophie kept it blunt, got the ick just from this woman's description of her husband. And there it is, sometimes the partner's behavior speaks volumes louder than anything the other woman ever says. She didn't think she was the jealous type. Honestly, she prided herself on being secure, grounded. But lately, Amy was starting to feel like she was living in a twisted sitcom one where the punchline was her marriage falling apart while everyone else laughed. And the star of that joke? A 30-year-old woman named Sarah, who had somehow appointed herself Mark's emotional wife by day while Amy was still trying to be his real one by night. It had started small, like these things always do. A few awkward jokes, the kind that make you smile in public and roll your eyes in private. Amy gave Sarah the benefit of the doubt, welcomed her, opened the door to her home, her marriage, her life. And Sarah walked through it like she owned the place. From snide digs about Amy's job because being a yoga instructor apparently isn't real enough for some people to mocking her cooking, the woman was relentless. But the real knife wasn't in what Sarah said. It was in how Mark responded. Or more precisely, how he didn't. Every time Amy tried to bring it up, she was too sensitive or reading into things. The men who once cried during their wedding vows now laughed as Sarah threw away their anniversary mug. A mug with their wedding photo on it. Amy didn't even have the energy to be mad about the mug anymore. That wasn't the point. The point was that he let it happen. The point was that a woman with no ring, no vows, no history was being allowed to rewrite the dynamic of a marriage she wasn't even part of. Sarah called herself his work wife like it was a cute joke. Amy wanted to scream every time she saw one of those captions online: #workspouse, #powercouple, #it rained him right. She wasn't just flirting, she was colonizing. And the office was her battlefield, rearranging his desk, curating his wardrobe, controlling his schedule. She even managed to convince him to turn down a promotion because it would move him to a different team. Not because it wasn't right for him, but because it would mean less time with her dad and Mark. He didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to see it. Maybe it was easier to believe that Amy was being paranoid than to admit he was letting someone else wedge herself into their marriage. The texts at all hours, the mandatory dinners that somehow always fell on their anniversary, the fact that Sarah knew more about his daily routines than Amy did, it was all there in flashing neon lights. And yet he stood in the middle of it, grinning, like it was all one big inside joke. But here's the part that really broke Amy. She wasn't even mad at Sarah anymore. Not really. Sarah was exactly who she presented herself to be: competitive, manipulative, and willing to bulldoze anyone who stood in her way. No, Amy was angry at the man who was supposed to protect their relationship. The man who should have had her back. Instead, he laughed at her pain, repeated Sarah's insults as jokes, let this woman chip away at their bond, and then wondered why Amy didn't want to hold his hand at night. She tried. God, she tried. She suggested therapy. She brought up boundaries. She even tried to reconnect, to rekindle the flame they once had. But every conversation felt like shouting into a vacuum. And somehow, Sarah always found out what was said, twisted it, used it as leverage, telling co-workers that Amy was insecure, that they were going through a rough patch, that she was the one Mark confided in now. Amy wasn't naive. She knew emotional affairs didn't always look like cheating. Sometimes they looked like cake, a birthday cake brought by a woman who was supposedly out sick, with a photo of her and Mark on top and the words "to my work hubby" scrawled across it in frosting. And when Amy walked into that office holding a homemade lunch and saw Sarah standing there, smug and smiling, all she could think was, how did I become the other woman in my own marriage? Mark just blinked, said it was a misunderstanding, acted like Amy was being dramatic. But how do you explain to someone that betrayal doesn't always wear lingerie? Sometimes it wears business casual and carries a coffee marked his usual, a coffee order that Amy no longer even recognized. Now she was exhausted, emotionally gutted. She didn't want to start over, didn't want to throw away years of love and memories and late night laughter. But she also couldn't keep handing pieces of herself over to someone who didn't notice they were breaking. She wasn't asking for grand gestures, just acknowledgement, boundaries, basic respect. And she was getting none of it. People might say divorce is extreme, that she should keep trying, be more patient, support him through his confusion. But what about her confusion? What about her pain? Wasn't she allowed to feel betrayed, even if he didn't mean to betray her? Wasn't she allowed to draw a line when someone else had already crossed it 100 times? Amy didn't want to be the villain in his office soap opera. She didn't want to fight Sarah or compete for affection. She just wanted her husband back, the one who saw her, who prioritized her, who understood that being married means choosing each other, especially when someone else is clearly trying to tear that apart. But if he couldn't see it, wouldn't see it, then maybe the question wasn't whether Sarah was trying to destroy their marriage. Maybe the real question was why Mark was letting her, and whether Amy could survive the answer. Subscribe for more stories and leave a comment. What would you do in the main character's place?